Apprentice here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to support more videos like this. Today we are making the Ski Lodge head warmer. It is super beginner friendly and we need the Loops and Threads Charisma yarn size 6 and an 8mm hook. I really like this yarn because it's chunky, so it works up fast, which is also good for beginners. This can also make 2 headbands per skein, and it's going to be bulky yarn, size 5 or size 6, and we're going to use an 8mm hook. To measure your head, you're going to wrap the measuring tape at the back of the head, above the ears, and across the forehead above the eyebrows. This is really important because we want the headband ear warmer to be 2 inches smaller than our head size because it's going to stretch over time, it's going to stretch in the wash, and we want it to be a nice snug fit. The headband is about 4 inches wide, and mine ended up being 20 inches long, and it's a pretty good fit. So there are 2 ways to make a slip knot. The first way is to cross your tail end over your working yarn like this, and then you're going to twist your hand over and pull the tail end up in a loop. This is the first way to make your slip knot. The second way to make a slip knot is to hold your fingers out like this and let the tail end fall down your fingers and secure it with your thumb. Then you're going to wrap the yarn around your 2 fingers, and then you're going to make an X. You're going to cross it over like this. Then we're going to flip our fingers over and secure it with our ring finger. We want to take our needle and we want to pull up the second loop by going underneath the first loop and pull like that. We'll do it one more time. This is the way I usually make a slip knot. It's very easy and it also helps prep for a magic circle. So we're going to have our tail end hang from our fingers like this, secure it with our thumb, and then we're going to cross it over, make an X, flip our hand over, and we're going to put our needle underneath the first strand so that we can pull up the second strand and make our slip knot. There are different ways to hold your needle based on your comfort level. This is called a knife hold. There's also the pencil hold where you're kind of working in a downward motion. I hold my hook with a knife hold. The second thing we want to do is practice holding our yarn. I make an L with my other hand and I put the yarn over my pointer finger, and then I use my remaining fingers to hold my work. You can use either just the middle finger and your thumb, or you can use all 3 fingers, but the pointer finger does need to stay up in order to hold your yarn. So we make a L with our hands, pointer finger facing up, and you can do this if you are left-handed or right-handed. make our L, hold our work. So I'm going to start by holding just below the knot, the slip knot that we have made, so we can start making our chain. To make a chain, we are going to want to yarn over our hook. And in order to do that, we're going to place our hook underneath the yarn like this. This is called a yarn over. Now we're going to use the top of the hook to pull this loop through the loop that already exists on our hook, and I'm going to hold my work so that it doesn't slip. This is one chain, and for this pattern we need to make 10. So I'm going to use my pointer finger to hold the loop that's on the hook, and I'm going to put the hook under the yarn. This is called a yarn over, and we're going to pull that loop through the loop that's on the hook. This is our second chain. We're going to continue in this fashion, keeping our pointer finger up, and we're going to gradually hold our work with the remaining 3 fingers, yarn over the hook, and pull it through the loop. This is our third chain. I'm twisting my hook to give myself some more leverage, just so that my yarn isn't sliding and it's easier to pull it through our loops as we chain. Yarn over, and we twist the hook and we pull down. So what we have done here is we have made a chain of 5. Here is how to count your chains. Each chain makes a bit of a V shape, so you can count them by counting the V's that exist from the slip knot that we have made. So that's 5 chains. We need to make 5 more for this pattern, and we want it to be 4 inches wide for our ear warmer. We're going to be working in the center of those chains in our next row, but let's finish our foundation chain first. We make an L with our opposite hand so that we can get good tension, and now I'm holding the work close to my hook so that nothing is sliding around. And that is 10 chains. So we're going to start our next row, but first, before we do that, we're going to chain one more. This is called a multiple. We want a multiple of 10 plus 1. We're going to add 1 chain so that we can have the correct number of stitches for our next row. This pattern is made up of single crochets, and we're going to start our first row. This is our first chain, And if we crochet into there, we're going to undo our work. So we need to work in the second chain from the hook. The loop on our hook does not count as a chain, so we're going to insert our hook into that second chain from the hook, and we're going to pull up a loop. The hook automatically goes behind the yarn, so we're going to twist our hook and pull up that loop. Now we have 2 loops on our hook, and to finish this single crochet, we're going to yarn over, put our hook under the yarn, and we're going to pull that loop through the 2 loops on our hook. And we've completed our first single crochet. We're going to do that with the remaining chains for this pattern. The next chain is right beside the single crochet we just completed, so that's where we're going to insert our hook next. Insert our hook, and we're going to pull up this loop. Pull it up. There are 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull that through the 2 loops on our hook. When I'm pulling up a loop, I'm making sure it's the same height as the previous single crochet so the work comes out even. The next chain is right beside the single crochet we just completed. Insert our hook, pull up that loop, pull it up to the same height as the previous single crochet, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull that through both loops. Going into the next one, insert our hook, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull that through 2 loops. We're going to continue doing that for the rest of this row. So I have reached the end of our row. There's 1 more left right beside that slip knot. And we have our first row of single crochets completed, and we're going to count to make sure we have the correct number of stitches before we go to our next row. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We also want to measure our work to make sure that it stays at 4 inches width. For every row we make with this pattern, we're going to start with a chain 1. This gives us the proper height before we start our next row, and then we're going to turn our work like so. We want to work in the very first stitch of each row, and we're looking for those V's. We want to put the hook under both of those strands in the V. Going to hold my work with my fingers like this, and we're going to put our hook through both loops like that. Because we're working with stitches now instead of chains, we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop the same height as my chain 1, so my work is even. And we're going to continue our single crochet pattern. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. We're going to do that for the rest of this row, making sure we're putting our hook underneath both strands of every stitch. So I've made it to the end of my row, and we're going to catch that 10th stitch here to make sure that we don't miss a stitch. So we finish that row 2, and this is what our work is looking like. So to start our next row, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work, as we will repeat this every single time we want to start a new row. So I've done a few rows. We're going to use a stitch marker to pause our work. This is how you save your work so it doesn't unravel. We're going to take a stitch marker and put it through the loop that our hook was on. And now we can save our work and come back to it when we're ready to continue. If your work looks like it's frowning back at you, this could mean that your work is expanding, and there's one of two things that can happen. You either have too many stitches, you have more than 10, or your rows are getting looser and we need to tighten our work. If our work is smiling back at us, that means we are crocheting too tight and our work is compressing. We need to loosen our rows by crocheting a little bit looser, or we need to check for missing rows. But if you flatten out your work and it stays straight, then everything is okay. So right now my piece shows 5 inches. However, because we're working upwards, once we stretch the work out, it's actually going to shrink to the appropriate size. Just like that. We still have 4 inches, it's just the way the yarn stretches. So now that we're ready to keep working, we're going to pull our stitch marker, remove it, and we can replace it with our hook and continue making our rows of single crochet. We're going to continue making rows until it equals the length that we first measured when we were measuring our head. I'm going to make my ear warmer around 20 inches because my head size is between 21.5 and 22 inches. I do want a bit of a snug fit, so we're just going to continue making rows until it is 20 inches long. So I've crocheted enough rows for my ear warmer and it is time to assemble it together. On my very last row, I'm going to chain 1 and then I am going to cut my yarn 3 times the width of my ear warmer. So I like to do the loop method where I just wrap the yarn 3 times the width of the ear warmer and then I will cut it there. and I'm going to pull that strand through the chain 1 that we worked, and that makes a knot and finishes the project. We're going to sew our ends together with an invisible seam, but first we want to match up our stitches and our chains. We're going to match the top portion first and secure it with a stitch marker so that when we are weaving in our invisible seam, we don't have mismatched rows. There should be 10 on each side. When we get started, we're going to take our darning needle and we're going to thread our long tail end through the darning needle. And now we're going to start. So we have these rows indicated by these lines here. We want to get a straight edge. So we are going to start our invisible seam from, not from the top chain here, but from the row behind it, right in here. We're going to put the needle through like this. And we're going to pull our thread so that it loops like so, and we create a straight bottom edge. Now for the rest of this invisible seam, we're going to be working underneath our stitches and our chain. So we're going to go underneath that first stitch, and we're going to match it with the first chain from the beginning, and we're going to work underneath that as well. We're not going to pull our thread too tight. We don't want to cinch the ear warmer. Match the next underneath, and we want to make sure we're getting underneath both strands of the stitches because the other edge is just chain that only has one strand. So for one side we're going underneath 2 strands, for the other side we're only going underneath 1. So that's the next chain that matches up, and we're going to go underneath it. We're going to continue this process all the way up, making sure we're matching our stitches and our chains. And I will meet you back at the top of our stitch marker. So we have made it back to the top. Going to weave in that last one, and we're going to remove our stitch marker to get our last weave in. Going in underneath that corner and then underneath the very last chain. And now we're going to just make a knot with our long tail end and the tail end we made in the beginning. So we're just going to go one more time, and we're not going to pull all the way. We're going to make a loop. Like this, and we're going to make a double knot. So one knot, pull that tight, and then we're going to make a second knot. So this is going to secure our headband, and now we're going to weave in our ends. So we want to weave in our ends in the opposite direction that the work is going to stretch. So we're going to weave in our ends downward. And to do that, we're just going to push our needle through our work downwards. And we're just going to do 2 weave-ins. This is the first one. Go down about a few stitches. And then we're going to go through a second time. We're going to go up in the opposite direction, but not the same way we came. We're going to go slightly over that one. And we're just going to go upwards so that the ends stay secure. We're going to pull a little bit of excess and cut so that when we stretch our work, the tail end is now hidden, like that. And now we're going to do the same thing with our second tail end. So we're going to cut our final tail end, and we are done. We have finished our ear warmer, and when we measure it, it's still around 4 inches wide, and I love adding faux leather tags to my work. It makes it look more professional and gives it that extra special touch. It is a great gift, and it makes an amazing accessory. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more beginner tutorials like this. Thanks so much for watching!